Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 48 of the Office Hours podcast. In today's episode, Mo and I had a chance to talk about architectures as it pertains to, just the UI or maybe your entire system, including all of your backends and all of these different things. And, I had a chance to rant a little bit about some of the ideas that I have in that domain. Some of the rants I have about, the fake promises of reusability and how any given architecture is not really a silver bullet, and a lot of them sound a lot like marketing concepts to me. So if it is something that you're interested in, please stick around, and I hope you enjoy. Thanks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the episode 48 of the Office Hours podcast. We'd like to welcome back Mo, and let's see what we're gonna figure out today. How are you doing, Mo?
I'm good. I'm good. You make it sound like I come to solve a grand national problem every time we talk, but we just chatting, basically. We just chatting. Most times we just chatting, no?
Yeah, but if we happen to accidentally solve some grand problem, that'd be nice. When you think?
Yeah, for sure. You know what? Now that you say it like that, I like it. This is a good plan. How are you?
Doing all right. Just came back from Vernon. We went to see our friends and to stay on a lake. Did a little of wake surfing, which is pretty sweet always. I wish I could do more of it, but it's
Lake
a
surfing.
yeah. It's an expensive hobby. You need a boat
Sounds
and
like it.
you need a waterfront property and like all the things that come with it. So, but every once
Mhm.
in a while we rent a boat with our friends and kind of go wake surfing for a couple hours. So it's cool. I'm making sure that I didn't get that boat license for nothing.
Okay. So you enjoy. I mean, to be honest, you do fun things.
Hmm.
Sometimes, yeah, you do fun things, basically. I mean, well, you know what? Relative. It's relative, right? Maybe to you, you don't think it's enough, but it sounds pretty fun to me.
No,
Like,
it's a lot of fun, but I can't
hmm.
take most of the credit. It's all Masha. She's been
Ah,
pushing my behind
okay.
to do stuff.
Now it makes sense. Okay, for sure. Okay, because like sometimes when we talk, sometimes I feel like you probably might enjoy spending time like, at home or like just like doing home stuffs.
Yeah,
But
it's fair to
when
say
you're
that.
out, yeah, now I understand it. Anyway, so to what I plan to talk to you about today, I've been doing I've been doing um some new projects now at work, and it got me into something that we probably talked about a while ago. I think one time we were talking about the concept of software architecture,
Hmm.
in a way where like, you know, I think we were talking about people being able to write codes, and like at some point we started talking like the what makes the difference between like some set of people and the others is their understanding of the architecture as well, and why certain things are done in a certain way or something like this. And nowadays, I found myself learning a lot about it. And honestly, I knew about it, but I didn't really feel like it was my responsibility to know about it in some of my positions before now. And now I think I have a need to, and and I've gotten really curious. So I wanted to ask you in the in Angular, I would say we have like some architecture out of the box, some form of structure.
Hmm.
But in in React, what are some of the common architecture that you have in React?
Hmm.
Like out of the box.
Ha. That, see, yeah, that's interesting because when you mentioned architecture, I thought you mean more like the grand design, the application, the
Yeah,
back end, the database, the networks,
we
ingresses, all of that type of stuff.
we're going there.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
just starting
Okay,
from the
okay.
beginning.
Fair enough. Well, if you think about it, architecture, it kind of has like a fractal nature, as in pieces are resembling the whole. So you can just zoom in and a smaller piece will have some sort of architecture within it. And if you zoom in further, that piece is going to have some architecture within it. So you can basically, at any level of closeness to the thing you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at, there's going to be some form that you can discern in there. And even if you just take a simple Angular application, you just, ng new, you have an application that it gives you, right? It kind of gives you something to follow. Whereas, because Angular is more of a framework and React is more of a library, although in latest years they trying really hard to move away from the whole library concept and move more into the framework concept. But still, for most part, it's like you just, with React, you get to pick and choose. You kind of have to come up with everything yourself. And even though there's some standard approaches, you can do more of how you'd like it compared to Angular. Angular is like more prescribed. And I think at that level, maybe architecture is too grand a word, but I would say that there are methodologies that you can follow, like you can follow atomic design, where you have some specific hierarchy, right? Or you can follow feature slice design, which is a different methodology. And it mostly has to do with like how you organize things so that they are understandable, repeatable, and make sense, and you don't end up with some massive ball of spaghetti
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your imports, which tends to become a problem eventually. It's like if every part of the system can import any other part of the system, that indicates problems. And one of the things that we're working on right now, or we will be working in the near future, is actually untangling our front end code to organize it. And I've decided to go with the feature slice design methodology for this, which just imposes a certain way of thinking about it. But, we haven't done it yet, so I don't know how he'll turn out. I have high hopes for it, but we'll see.
Yeah. Just I was really enjoying how you were breaking it down, but I didn't want to forget to ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Can you expand on what you mean by features life? Features life? Is that what you said?
Feature sliced. It's just a name.
Feature slice.
Yeah, FSD. It's just a name. They have a
What
website.
does it?
So the idea
What does it say?
the idea behind it is that you have features, and you kind of you slice your application into these segments that are logically organized, and then it imposes a certain hierarchy on it, and it imposes a certain rules when it comes to imports. Like basically there's like a bottom layer where everybody can import from, and every layer on top of it can only import from the layer below it. So you kind of have to figure out where in that hierarchy to place your components. So like the bottommost layer is called shared because it's shared with
Mm-hmm.
everybody.
Oh,
Everybody can pull it.
okay. Oh,
And
yeah.
then you have
Okay.
like the
Okay.
application layer at the very top, which
Okay.
aggregates everything underneath it. So
So,
it's like this
so,
very top down, no cross imports and things like that. So it's very, very specific.
so what you're referring to is the arrangement of the files.
Yes, yes.
This is what you mean.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Because for me, I think, like I said, I was learning some architecture stuff, mostly with like Angular uh, right now. But in my learning so far, I've like come across a few terms that I didn't know about before, and I guess that was why I was curious to know what you mean by feature sliced. But
Mm-hmm.
for us, like for me right now, I'm learning stuff like when I say like architecture in terms of when you're planning a software product, you want to plan certain things. Sometimes you have the structure of your application that becomes a bit complicated, like to reuse for different other activities. Let's say, for example, you're building an application right now and it's just for web, but you can also use the same application for mobile,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you want to use it like in a different platform or like so we have this in the back end, in a way where you can actually like usually in the back end you have um, model view, something like this,
Model view controller.
controller,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And you have, there's a data layer somewhere, there is the view, there is the logic layer and stuff like this. And
Mm-hmm.
like at some point, some of the backend frameworks started making it into like even leaner components in this place. Nowadays, I'm learning about stuff like this on the front end, specifically the hexagonal architecture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And right now, it's a bit of an interesting concept for me
Mm-hmm.
because before now, I mean, many people or many places where I've worked, I've just really used probably like the common three-layer architecture, where you have like your data, domain, presentation layer, SSR,
Mm-hmm.
and now we just just learning about all the components that make up the hexagon, like the hexagonal architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think you need a lot of patience to really enjoy it because except you have like I think I wanted to talk about this with you
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
feel
yeah.
like yeah you and I think in my own opinion right now, like I said, like I'm just using it because I'm doing like a refactor where like we're trying to make some part of our application somehow like this, and I'm just trying to understand like what made anyone think like this,
Mm.
like why do you want to? I mean, I get the purpose, but sometimes in probably in some architect in some application, you may never even use this feature. It's like it's like
Yeah. I may have a
you
hot take for you, but yeah, finish what you have in mind.
yeah, you may never even use this feature. Say like, oh yeah, we want our application to be you can export like different parts of it, because we have this in the back end. We also want to have the same similar concept in the front end, and yeah, split everything. Like you have facades everywhere, doing different things. I mean, I just want to see, I want to understand your own point of view because this is how it is looking to
Yeah.
me right now.
Okay.
Although
I have
it
some
doesn't
hot
take
takes
away,
and I have some rants. So,
it doesn't take away, it doesn't take away the fact that I appreciate the concept,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
wondering,
Okay. So,
does it?
you know, brace yourself. So, one hot take that I was thinking through while you were, conveying this is so many
Mm,
people get trapped by this idea of reusability. And everybody's trapped. It's like, oh, we have to make our code reusable. It's like this, you know temple on a hill that everybody tries to reach. It's like, oh, our code has to be reusable. And so they start piling up all of the patterns. They read the Gang of Four book back to front 5-7
mhm,
times. They
mhm,
memorize the
mhm,
names of all the patterns. And it's like, okay, here we can use the decorator, and here we can do this pattern and that pattern. And they put the patterns all over their code. And in the end, if you look at a lot of these projects, most projects, especially in Java, I don't know why Java people love their patterns so much, but
oh
they
yeah,
they
this
just
is,
they just love their patterns. It's like anytime you open any sufficiently large Java
yeah,
project, it's gonna be decorator this and factory that,
mhm,
and it's just okay.
mhm,
I never particularly enjoy working in code bases like that because it takes like 27 clicks to get from an interface to an actual implementation through like a chain of various dependency injected things.
mhm,
And in the end, you have interface with a single implementation. So all of that machinery that you put on top, you never really leverage it because your every interface that you inject through your dependency injection system has single implementation. It's never going to be swapped for anything else. For like 98% of the code, it's just one-to-one. You literally could throw away all of that and it would have been 15 times easier to understand because you don't have to
mhm,
jump through all of these hoops. But hey, we have to follow the pattern. We can't just instantiate a class and pass it to another class. That's such a horrible thing to do. And like I get it. Maybe they get some usage out of it in tests because, you have to mock things, and it's much harder to mock things in Java compared to JavaScript. So they have to hide stuff behind interfaces, and then they mock dependencies for tests and all of that good stuff. But it just creates so much just indirection that doesn't really help anything, realistically. Like, it helps some use cases, but realistically, it doesn't really help that much. And the whole thing with reusability is, again, probably 90% of your code you're going to be right is not going to be reusable, and you should just forget about it. And if it needs to be reusable, you will know it when you need to reuse it. So don't try to anticipate what is going to be reusable and what is not going to be reusable, and just make it reusable later. Because, you spend all of this effort to make everything reusable, and then you reuse exactly none of it. All of that time was basically wasted, And if you spent like 20 hours writing your components and another 10 hours to make them reusable, okay, fair enough. And then you reuse one of them. Or maybe you spend 10 hours writing your components, and if you need to reuse that one, you can spend 2 hours more and make it reusable. And now, you have so much free time left over, ideally, that you can spend someplace else. So the trap of trying to anticipate, and I've been subject to that myself. You're trying to build this perfect architecture that's going to handle all edge cases. And in the end, it's almost like you have to invent your system attempts to be such so generic and so broad and so common purpose that you just invent like a new programming language effectively on top of something else, because everything's super dynamic and super configurable and it can do everything, but it's not worth it. Like, build the thing you need to build, and if you need to change it later. A lot of projects, you build them and you never really make anything new out of it. You just maintain them until they finally die. And the thoughts that you have in your head about what might happen, guaranteed, is not what's going to happen. You're anticipating things and you build code to like sort of prepare for them, and they never happen. And in fact, some completely different things happen that you're completely unprepared for. And now your architecture doesn't really allow for that too well. You kind of have to break a lot of things, and it's just not worth it, And the other thing is, I was thinking about, is that you can start a project and you can say, I want to pick an architecture and I want to stick to it from day one. And the problem with that, not the problem, but the things that tend to happen is, when you have few things to put in your system, it's like you build a scaffolding for a skyscraper, and then you build a little bit on a first floor, and then you build a little bit on a 25th floor, and then you have this massive scaffolding with like a little bits of code here and there. And when people look at it, it's like, what's the point of all this? Like, what does it solve? Because maybe once you build the whole thing and it's all neatly organized, it makes perfect sense. But as you're building it in the beginning, you might not even be sure where to put stuff. I feel like the other extreme of it is, I was going to say, you have to be flexible, because early stages, while your code base is small and lean, it's easy to make changes because you don't have the burden of code that you've accumulated over the years. So changes are fast. So if you bolt yourself down to something overly specific, it's going to make it more difficult. But the other extreme is, a lot of projects, they grow organically. You just add features and add features and add features, and instead of a neat skyscraper that's all like delineated and drafted with all these straight edges everywhere, you just have some organic growth that looks like a head of broccoli, where it's just like sprouting things all over the place. And now you look at it and, maybe head of broccoli is kind of a bad example, because it does have its own symmetry you can kind of see. But, you just have something just bizarre. You look at it and you can't make out any individual parts. Like those early video AI hallucinations where you kind of see things in there, but it's just it's like trippy. You don't really, you sort of see something in there, but not really, and it constantly shifts and changes, and you're like, it freaks you out. And so you look at these things and you can't quite discern anything in there that is structured. And at that time, a lot of people, if they see the project has a future, they sit down and they say, okay, we have to refactor and we have to turn it nice. And that's why you would then try to see how you can reorganize it and if it's possible at all. And the best course of action is just, you have a spurt of organic growth, and then you slice and dice and organize it, and then you have another spurt of organic growth, and you kind of, so you don't write code for 3 years and then you decide to refactor it. It's supposed to be this ongoing thing, which may or may not be available to you due to market pressures and other things that rob you of your 30% refactoring that your manager told he'll give you, and then it just like disappears.
Yeah, I feel exactly how you feel about this. I mean, for the most part of it, because especially with the fact that I think if when you start building out a project, you probably would know. I mean, you should have some plan with like using it, like how you intend to use the application that you're building, But I also, this is where like the road divides a little bit for me, because like I understand that there is I think there is something about evolution, like as the application grows, like evolves. Sometimes I'm trying to think now, like, would you even get more value from, like, let's say you started building something with a very simple architecture, and then you grow over the years, and then you get to a point where you realize, like, well, you probably might need to change your domain or like something like this. Like, you probably need more actors, like someone else to use some part of your application. And now you're thinking about which one do you think will be more cost effective, to refactor or to build a new application?
Oof. That's the question for the ages. I remember we had a conversation about like refactor versus rebuild, and when either has merits. But they're both are not pleasant experiences. And there's also goals for refactoring. Like if you need to refactor it to allow other people to use it, I would say these days it might be easier to just expose parts of it through some sort of HTTP based interface and let them consume it that way without like linking directly to your code. Maybe if it's possible. But again, in terms of reusability, again, everybody's saying, oh, reusability is great. And every time you try to to go with these examples, they give you something really, really contrived. That's like, it makes sense within that example itself, but applied to broader business applications, you barely ever see that ever. And so again, like, okay, you say other people need to use part of your application. Like how, you mean like other development team needs access to the code you've written? Or,
So, so I can break it down a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, how do you say? Let's say, let's keep it front end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have like mobile,
Yeah.
like there is different UI for different applications. So let's say you were building specifically for web in the first place, and this is the default. And then after a while, you decided like, yeah, you would like a mobile app. Now there is, I think you can build for iOS, and then you can build for Android. Like, and they probably might not have the same UI, like,
Yeah.
maybe you might have, but the actual data and the domain, like the logic for each of what the applications will be doing, they probably might be in the same place. So you can be able to reuse like the logic for some of the business logic for the application in these different places.
Right.
Say, but when you started, you didn't really think you were going to have to do this.
Yeah.
Right? You were just building for the web. And maybe you might have coupled up a lot of your presentation with the logic, and everything is inside everything. But and now that you have to switch it to divide it, um, do you think it is easier in this case, like at this point, to go through the pain of like refactoring and like trying to like decouple and like spending time to find a suitable architecture for you to use in all these places? Or do you just build a new application
I
from
see what you mean.
scratch
I see what you mean.
and then have a good architecture for it?
I think that in this particular scenario, um, a lot of these things are effectively driven by your data, right? Like you have to present some data through web, through mobile app or whatever. So a lot of it is going to fall down on your API designs, especially like these days, if you're building a web application, maybe not like today, because there's all of these new technologies that come out that start taking the responsibility of data handling from the front end back into back end, and it kind of oscillates back and forth between who's responsible for data. Is it the front end? Is it the back end? It's kind of all over the place. But in like a classic application where you have your back end that provides an API and you have your front end that consumes the API, and a lot of times the API is going to be like very one-to-one parity for the UI that's consuming it, right? And if you were sort of trying to future-proof that piece, maybe you said, oh, let's use GraphQL for that, because then different applications can sort of Lego out whatever data they need based on our schema, right? That makes your life much easier. So potentially you just need to expose better API surface. And just, I think one problem for, yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. I think you, I understand it like from the API perspective. Like from the API is usually like separated from, I mean, it's not entirely separated. It receives like the instructions on but in terms of like front end now. So I was saying something about the hexagonal architecture earlier, and what this is the actual selling point. So in this architecture, like they have like the data layer where you fetch your information from the backend and then you keep it just in this layer. So this layer is like the data source
Right.
for the presentation and the rest of them. And in this layer does not know, like has a controller layer that serves as like the core where you can actually like do all your um manipulations and like whatever that you fetch from the data layer. Not so first you have like in Angular you probably have like what services first, and then if you have NGRX then you still have to like fetch to the store, and then from the store now you have to create a facade because you don't want to talk to the store directly. Then you create a facade. You create a facade. You create a facade for this, and then now you create another container that contains the rest of the component. All of this drama, right? This is what I'm saying. Like, now you're trying to do all of this because you want to reuse the middle layer for different UI interfaces. So now, like, this is still UI, but separated.
Yeah.
This is where my pain is.
I see.
Why? What are we doing? Like, do we do it from scratch? Or
Yeah. So I think it might be easier with Angular because they enforce some separation of concerns, at least. You have the concept for services. Like a service is just some API that gives you some observable with the data that you're interested in, right? And then you use that observable and you plug it to where it's being rendered. And if you look at React, they're like, screw that, just use hooks everywhere inside your UI code. Just tangle it all together so it never can be separated again. So I think React projects are going to have much harder time trying to deal
like
with
this.
that. Even with architectures, like, again, I'm not recommending anyone use Redux in the year 2024 of our Lord, because it's just not a good idea these days. I don't think so. I don't think it's a good idea.
Signal?
Signals? You mean like the JavaScript new spec for signals, or which one?
Yeah, like signals, like and I don't even know if you can use that in React, can you? Anyway,
Probably
go
not.
on.
But what I'm saying is, what was I saying? Yeah, like at least like with Redux, you can capture your side effects where you talk to your APIs and maybe extract them into some middleware so
Mm-hmm.
they're not completely bound to the UI. But even then, you kind of have to do the right thing. And the whole point of it is you may not have like some grand architecture, but if you're diligent in separating the concerns so that your business logic code never leaks into your UI code, you're going to have much easier time because there's going to be clear layers with specific interface points that you can say, oh, I can take this entire slice and just interface different thing on top of that. But if you just have everything everywhere all at once, great movie, but it's not
Yeah,
really
great movie.
it's not really
Great movie.
gonna work too well for
Mm-hmm.
you, you know. It's just extricating, untangling these things is gonna be a very difficult task. And so, you know, we are currently in this refactoring spree where I'm being very specific about disallowing most business logic in UI level, which is a hard job and it requires a certain mentality shift, I would say. But and you know, in our case, it's easier because the mobile app is developed by some entirely different company, so we don't have to really care about that,
Oh,
you know.
okay.
So, um, but even then, like if kind of going back to the whole reusability thing, you know, 10 years ago, there was this big promise of hybrid apps. It's like, oh, you write it once and then you can build a mobile app out of it. And for iPhone and Android, all the same, you can reuse the whole code base, which was like a marketing pitch, which is again, like a lot of these things, for some weird reason, they're very heavy on marketing. They're
Mm-hmm.
trying to sell you why it's gonna be
Yeah.
great for you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, why am I being sold on this? Like, why are you trying
Yeah.
really hard to convince me that this particular thing is going to solve all of my
Yeah.
problems?
Yeah. I watched
It's
some seminars.
you know, it's kind of strange. It's like, oh, you know, if you use agile, all of your problems are going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know that much about hexagonal architecture. Like I've seen some diagrams, like there's like a core and there's like these different verticals that sort of interface
Yeah.
with one another.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, fair enough. If it works for you, it works for you. But like all of them say that like, oh, our architecture is panacea. It's gonna solve all of your problems. And then when it doesn't solve all of your problems, you're just being told like, oh, you didn't do it right. So it's a you problem. It's
Yeah.
not the problem of the architecture itself. It's a you problem. You didn't do it right. You know. And
This is
so
common. This is
yeah,
common in
yeah.
our industry. Like,
I
if
am
it doesn't work for you,
yeah. I'm
it's a
very
you problem.
weary of the marketing claims, and it's like yes, you had to do it right,
Mm-hmm.
or it works on some kind of contrived trivial example where it's like, well, no duh, you know. It's like of course it works here. You know, it's like all of these OOP tutorials, and you know, you listen to a video of Sandy Metz espousing the greatness of OOP with her Ruby examples, and it looks all kind of cool and neat. And then it's like, yeah, but I can do exactly the same thing without OOP. So why is it like, what's the big
But
selling
you know,
point? You know?
I like OOP though. You know what? I like OOP. I don't even know if I have to like it or not. I just think like it's just very important base knowledge that I think it's very important for everyone to learn about. Like, if you write any sort of good code, like
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have yeah I had this joke that came to my mind just now. It's like, you know, you have to have your functional programming phase. The functional programming phase is kind of like programmer's puberty. You just have to get through
Yeah.
it
Mm-hmm.
and get
Mm-hmm.
the, you know, all the zits that come with it, and then kind of relax and be fine. So if you haven't had your functional programming phase, you should try it out.
Well, it's debatable. We will not do this debate today. But anyway. No. But anyway, another day, maybe next week we'll talk about this.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think I was thinking about the question I asked you, right? And for me, I was thinking like there are some things that I think I would also still like to learn in terms of like the business level of our industry. Because I think some things sound to us technically as a simple stuff to decide on, and maybe it could be a very different perspective for people on the business department, like to they have so for me, I'm thinking if we have a situation where I have to extend my application into other places and reuse, like we said, reusability, and I think might even, let's say you might do refactor and then you just refactor the part that you need, not probably not the entire thing, and then you do like the other. And I'm wondering, have you used your time better? Because if we are talking about decoupling too, let's say something happens to this layer that we are sharing across different entities, then everything breaks down. Is this even a good idea? And also, if we decide to like build, let's say we build the web application separately from the mobile application, separately from like, anything else, and maybe this will be a better more secured way to actually work, because at least like if something happens to the the web application, people can still access your product from like mobile app, or like they can still do, there is still something to fall back on. And in times when you need to do maintenance, everything doesn't shut down at once. Like, so now this is really putting me in a very, like, I sit down and I'm kind of having an argument with myself right now, because I'm thinking about it like I really want to say I love this software engineering concept that we are getting, and like it's really beautiful. This guy, what's his name? The hexagonal guy, like, oh, he's thinking very deep. But now I'm thinking about it like I don't even know if this is a good idea. Like, if we really make everything depend on something like one source, even right now, I think some new concepts are coming up like in the back end. Like right now you're trying to like not have just one single entity, or like you want to protect your data source so much that you don't even communicate to it directly or something like this. Like we're having all of this.
Yeah.
And now with the front end, we're saying, okay, we want to do these two in the front end and like have like one data source or like one layer where everybody comes to and fetch information from, or something like this. And we want to say we want to be able to reuse this everywhere. And I'm thinking, is this even a good idea, first of all?
Well,
And also, and also, if it is, um, what happens during maintenance?
yeah. I think that ultimately, and it's gonna sound like a cop out, but the answer to a lot of these things is always it depends, right? And it's not like you have a spectrum of you have a crappy architecture that doesn't solve your problem, and then you have a perfect architecture that solves your problem, and you just take that slider and you just like drag it to the other side, and boom. It's more of a, like in the cap theorem, you have your triangle and you have to put a point close to some place so you can get some benefits here at the cost of losing things here. And for things like architecture, it's probably like a multifaceted shape, and you kind of have to pick that sweet spot with all of the trade-offs. It's like, yeah, if we have 3 separate data sources for the apps, how are we going to ensure that our data gets synchronized? That's a big problem. But at least if the website goes down, the mobile app remains working, so that's a plus. And everybody just needs to make that choice. Like, what is more important for your application and for your team and for your users? And you go from there. Like, you have to be informed about these different approaches, and that's why I'm saying like you should try out functional phase, just so you're informed of what is available to you. I'm not saying
That
that you
makes
have
sense
to
anyway.
rewrite your entire stack, even though the in the first 3 months after starting functional, you'll be like, shit, we have to rewrite everything. Everything needs to be functional, and that also passes. You'll get through that phase. It'll be over. But once you're informed of all the different flavors that you could do, you can synthesize something that's appropriate for your project. Because there is no universal truth out there for building things, It has to work for you and for your team and for your users and for your infrastructure.
Yeah.
So there's like all of these constraints that are imposed on you from outside. And when somebody comes in and says, yeah, hexagonal architecture or whatever methodology is going to solve all of your problems, you should be like that, like that skeptical dog.jpg meme, where it kind of looks at you like,
Yeah. But I guess at the end of the day, like you said, it depends on your team, like what you're really working on. I was just asking all these questions because I just recently started learning about it. And it is interesting to me. Like, it's just something when you read on your own, it is making sense because you're reading it to yourself, right? Like, I'm feeling like, I'm enjoying this. But now that I'm saying it out loud and I'm actually having a conversation about it, I'm questioning some of these concepts in my head. Like, is it as exciting as it sounds? Anyway, maybe over time, as I continue to use it and to have more experience with it, I think maybe I would find the purpose, like the selling point, and be able to sell it to other people. But right now, I can only sell it from a very general point of view.
Right.
So maybe
that makes total sense. I think the one trap not to fall into, like if you're holding a hammer, everything looks suspiciously like a nail. It's just because you learned about some new shiny way of doing things does not mean that you immediately have to implement it across the entire spectrum. It's like it's like detergent cleaning products. They say first try on a small piece of surface not visible to make sure that there's no side effects. Don't just like dunk your entire garment in it and then when it's destroyed say like, So, very kind of cautiously and judiciously build a pet project with it. See how that goes.
Well,
if you have time.
I could do that.
Yeah,
I could do that, but I'm actually using it at work, so this is, this is more interesting than pet project, but I think I should do a pet project in it to actually use it myself. This would probably make more sense.
I think sometimes when you're convinced, you kind of have to make an executive decision and just sort of stand by your choice. So this is what I did at work. I basically said, okay, by decree, I'm imposing this on the project because I think it's a good idea. And, I have an understanding about why this is a good idea. And I think I can justify my choice. And people may not be agreeing with that because, it makes things difficult. It makes things uncomfortable in the first, however many months of the transition. But in here, I'm like, okay, I know that it's a good idea, so we should do it. And it could epically backfire and blow up right in my face. It's a possibility too, so there's that risk too. So you have to, if you go that route, you better be damn sure.
Nah.
Yeah.
No, you know what? I don't think, no. It's just a concept. You learn about it and then you implement it. So right now I'm in the, how do you say that? Probably like the beginning phase. So yeah, like I said, maybe in the next few weeks or like soon when I will have like stronger opinions about it. And then I will come back to you. We will talk about it again for sure. Because like right now, it's exciting. It's like when you start doing something new and a new concept, you find it exciting and you probably just want to share it. So
absolutely. But I think it's the stage where you're just doing easy things and easy things are easy. So it's kind of all like la 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 la. It's nice,
Maybe.
And then you hit something that actually requires, it may be not even compatible with what you're trying to do. So when you're trying to shove that square peg in a round hole, and then you like So it's like you're super enthusiastic about it,
Yeah,
then you hit some
yeah.
weird edge case and you get like super disillusioned about it. And as you work through it, you kind of reach some level of like, okay, I can see where this can be appropriate for whatever project that I'm working on. It's like the hype cycle, effectively,
To be
in a
honest,
sense.
I don't know if I'm gonna have much choice because right now, right now, like I explained to you, like there we have like some teams that are responsible for this, like at work, and this is what we they think is the direction
Yeah,
where we should be going.
yeah. No,
So
then
I
just
march on, head on. This is where we're going. And for me, I just had questions, right? And I wanted to learn more about it. So
yeah,
I've been doing my learning, and
yeah,
I'm seeing where it will go. And honestly, I want to believe that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like I'm gonna get to a point where I'll be like, yeah,
yeah,
it's really good. I
yeah,
like this idea, and I
yeah.
want us to do it. Right now, I'm just there like, why do I have so many layers for this?
Yeah.
Like,
I think usually these things turn out in it's like I think it was okay. Like you're not gonna be like, oh my god, this is so great. It's absolutely marvelous. I think it usually, you go through ups and downs. It's like okay, it's been good. It's been okay. And the other thing to think about is like some metaphor from this guy, but you have to look at it and you have to understand: is it like a one-way door or is it a two-way door? Like once we get through that door,
I don't
like
know.
can we come back from
Yeah.
this if it goes south? And that's because maybe you can take a couple of steps in that direction, realize that it's actually not gonna work out, and just get back and be like, okay, well, we tried this, it didn't work, let's look for something else. Or if you're committed and you rewrote half of your architecture and like there's no way, there's no going back now, wah wah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what? I hear that. Hopefully, this does not happen. But I
Yeah.
will tell you. I will let you know how it goes for sure.
All right.
Like,
Yeah.
like right
Awesome.
now, I'm in the market and then because of this, I started getting like really interested in like architectural concepts. That's why I was asking you about architectures in like React, because now I'm starting to wonder. Like, I think my experience with React was just like pretty much you can do everything on one page. Most of I don't mean to offend anybody listening to this, but like I think that's the idea of React, right?
Are you saying that
Really
this
fast.
35,000 line render method is not good enough?
Pretty
Architecture? What
much,
architecture?
yeah. Pretty much everything can happen on one page, just like one file. Like
Yeah.
just write everything. But I don't know if people still work like this, because I imagine like it would be really difficult. But I was curious. I would like to know how do what would you consider like best practices in terms of like structuring your code in React? I mean,
Yeah, I usually kind of go with the organic approach. And once the file gets a little bit unwieldy, I would start splitting it up. Now that I'm dipping my toes more with feature sliced, I think that informs me about, again, a lot of these things is, well, the more constraints you put on yourself, well, the more constrained you are. So it makes it
mhm,
difficult to move fast. Like the one reason that I just don't care about any organizing principle and just like literally have like index.tsx in the first couple of weeks of the project is because I'm just like throwing a whole bunch of stuff on it and seeing what sticks, right? And once it starts taking some shape,
yeah,
then we can think about start pulling it out, because again, navigating over 5,000 line file is just unwieldy. It's annoying. So you kind of just force yourself to split it, because by now you kind of have to, you can't get away with it for too long.
yeah, that's React.
But now, again, with the feature sliced, it's like, okay, I have an organizing principle, but I don't have to leverage it 100% right from the start. I can tentatively split things, but again, I'm not like fully committed to it where I can never deviate. I can still play around with it. And that also forces you to isolate your domains better. And I mean, I never really been a big practitioner of like domain-driven design or anything like that, but there's a lot of echoes and parallels between it. It's like you carve out the certain slices of functionality and you have the organizing principle where like the common parts of them are going to be organized in a similar way, which is nice because everybody, if somebody worked using this methodology, they come in and be like, okay, I understand exactly what's going on. It's just the actual project that I need to learn, not how everything, where everything sits and where everything lives, right? And yeah, the one thing though that you should commit to day one is what we didn't do day one is I feel like you have to make pretty draconian setup for at least for TypeScript projects is like, you gotta crank your ESLint to the max to avoid all of the
I can
common
imagine.
dumb things. Like we had a thing where we enabled some rules and it's like, oh, 700 errors. Oh shit, And the thing is,
Yeah.
you think like, okay, the project's been around for almost 2 years and it works. So what difference does it make? And it's like, I turn on the rule, I look at the errors and I'm like, I'm not quite sure what's happening here because this cast is masking what's really going on. And I can't analyze the intent behind it because we just like hand wave some stuff away and the compiler never complains about it. So what the heck is going on here? And I realized that like if we had that rule and we did not allow these things from day one, more thinking and intent would have to go into that particular spot. So it probably would have been better. So,
Mhm. You know, this is interesting with React because, like, I can imagine, like, if you have all of this going on, I imagine, like, by now, especially when they start, like, doing, like you said earlier, like, trying to make React change it from the concept of just being a library to probably like some sort of framework, which I'm not sure if it is going well, but I don't know if I can tell yet. But I want to know, like, how do you, what is like this expectation in terms of like best practices now?
I don't know.
Say you are building a complex application with several components. I know like you can probably just have your component, everything existing somewhere, but in terms of like, yeah,
To
if
be
you want,
honest with you, I don't know. I have picked both effector and feature sliced because, well, they go well together because they kind of, the domains and the way that things are split kind of work naturally on top of one another. It might not work as well with other means of like storing your code. Like if you're using Redux or something, FSD might not like apply too well on top of it. And the reason I picked it is because I think that it's going to make our code base better. Whether or not it's best practice or industry standard, I have no idea. But it's going to be better than what we had before in our own project. Because there are places in our code base where it's like abandon hope ye who enters here, because it's just like, oh man, you
yeah,
you
honestly,
start bleeding out of your eyes when you open that code. And we put ourselves in that situation, right? Because it was this organic evolution where we were trying to fix things and then fixing the fixes and fixing the fixes of fixes, right? So, there was no opportunity at the time to take a big step back and say, hey guys, what are we doing? Would imposition of some kind of methodology or library forced us to do it differently and better? Maybe. I don't know. I can't guarantee that. I think that even if you have that architecture and you have that methodology, you can still make
yeah,
a bunch of really dumb decisions
yeah,
that will
true,
broadly fit into the
yeah, true.
methodology. Like you know, oh man, there's that funny video about like for the kids they have this thing where it's like a box, and on the cover there's
Mm-hmm.
like different shaped holes, and
Mm-hmm.
inside the box there's like these shapes, so for little babies to like put the things through appropriate holes. So like if it's a cylinder,
Mm-hmm.
it goes through the round hole. And
Yeah.
there's this video and it's like, oh, we have a triangle. Where does that go? In the round hole. And then we have the
Yeah.
cube. It goes in a round. It's like everything goes in a round hole. And by the end, the person's like just basically crying because like everything is going in the round hole when it like
It
the intention,
fits.
the intention was this, but we managed to subvert it entirely because you can. So if you have an architecture, you can still subvert it in a way that you can. That will just make everything completely pants
Ah,
on head.
yeah. This is like probably, if I understand what you're saying, it's like when you use any in TypeScript. I
Yeah,
know you're supposed,
effectively, it's like who cares? Any, whatever.
but then again, this is where like it's good probably to have like a way to do things like a standard like
Right.
for your team. Like I guess for example right now I imagine like if you are reviewing a code or something like this for your team, you probably will be able to hold other people accountable for this. Like this is how we do things, and like yeah, why didn't you do it? Like let's say you put this component, we put components like this in this
Yeah, yeah.
folder, like something like this, like
But it's like, oh,
but
hey, production's on fire. We need to push the fix. I have to chuck an any in there because we need to get it out in the next 30 minutes.
yeah, I mean honestly I see your point, but again this is very, it's another way, something else we should talk about. Like maybe at some point we might talk about
Yeah.
how to even like pass this culture across the team, because not everybody has
Yeah.
like the same
It's like
working
if you
style.
if you don't appreciate why using any is bad, no amount of linters will save you. It's just not
Yeah,
something that is gonna make any difference. It's
yeah.
you know, uh,
You know what? AD is not that bad. No. Let me explain myself.
TypeScript is the Garden of Eden, and any is the poisonous snake tempting you.
Let me explain myself. Yeah, let me explain myself. Recently, I there was a scenario where like I don't know, like sometimes when you do like unit testing, let's say if you test with
Yeah, just
um Jest, you test with Jest, and sometimes when you want to mock do you use Jest as well? Oh yeah, when you want to
yeah,
test with Jest and you want to mock your let's say you want to mock a component or like a service, you want to do a service mock,
yeah.
and sometimes it's pretty complicated to actually mock the service, like get
But
the
that that
actual
that
task.
highlights something about your code. If it's that complicated, it
No,
means
no,
that
but the
thing is
service.
overloaded, right? So you have to split
So,
it.
so for example, translate service. It's a very
Yeah.
common one. The translate service, I don't know, like it's you cannot mock all the methods in the translate service. Like sometimes you probably can just like use a bit of it. Let's say you just want to like use maybe the instance function or something
Yeah.
like this, just a bit of it. You know, in this case, you could use any, and as you could do like two. This is what I'm propose. I'm not saying use any directly. What I'm saying is you could use like a double casting, like maybe as any as something, or
Yeah.
like
I see
or
what
like
you mean.
unknown, or like unknown.
Yeah, but the thing is the problem with it, and we have a lot of it in our current tests right now. And I actually wrote an ESLint rule that basically detects that and says, hey, use just mocked instead, or at least try to. Because if your implementation changes, at least if you have a type safe stuff in tests, it will also blow up in tests. It's not only going to blow up in your code. And we have a bunch of this stuff where we have the mock data in JSON where the types don't really work. Like some string literal types don't work
Yeah,
because it casts everything to a string. And there was a bunch of places where it's like, oh yeah, we got this data from an external CMS system, and we took a snapshot of that 6 months ago, and since then the schema evolved. But because in our tests everything is cast through any, none of those things are ever caught that, oh, by the way, that data is no longer there, or that data is no longer relevant, or that type is no longer relevant, because it's just like, ooh, any, it all went away.
yeah, yeah.
So
But this is different though.
it's just a foot gun. You set it up, and then one day you're gonna blow your foot off with it.
Yeah. Yeah. This is different. Basically, this is different. And let me explain. Maybe. So, for example, I use the translate service as an example, but I think where you're coming from, it's probably like this translate service, I didn't write it. I'm just like mocking the service that I use for translation. You know, let's say I create a method and I am mocking my method and I'm giving it an expected value. You know how you do ingest, like you do like mock return value, something like this, and then you give it like a value, and then you go in your test to write a test to test what the value should be. So you have mocked thing and you actually already know. So it's like you are testing your mock basically. So maybe in this time, like if you change something in the actual code, it's possible for you. But I learned something about this, and I don't know, this is Angular. Anyway, I learned about ng mocks. Anyway, like you can actually directly mock your components directly to not do this. But the issue I was saying with any was just like any has a very bad reputation in TypeScript.
As everybody
thinks everybody thinks like any should just and it's a bad thing. But I found like there is a good point to it. Like at some point TypeScript gets really stubborn and you just really need to
it's a really easy way of just like, I mean, like, yes, people can use it. I'm saying that they probably shouldn't use it, and yes, not using it makes their life more difficult, but it puts more protections in place, you know? So the thing with code bases is that once you have a bad pattern in there, it's gonna start getting replicated by other people.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? And so as soon as you have that one whiff of this thing, people be like, oh, I'm okay with using that. I can just use that everywhere. And then it's like slowly starts propagating. And I've seen it every time. Yeah. Literally every time.
The argument would be, they do it in other files too. Like check in other files.
It's the Pandora's box. Once you open it, that's it. You're not putting that genie back into the bottle. But anyway, maybe now
it is what it is.
Yeah. Now would be a good time to, don't use any, kids. At least.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Honestly, use wisely or like
use.
I don't know.
I guess the one final thing I was gonna say is, if you separate your business logic from your UI, your components are so dumb that testing them doesn't even make sense for most part.
Yeah, but sometimes you might have some smart components too.
Yeah, you could. But the business logic of that smartness, if it's completely outside of the UI code, and UI code is like, React intention was, it's a function that takes some props and spits out some DOM. Like barely any logic in it. If you constrain it to that, you make your life much easier. And hooks are completely destroying that concept, and that's why I'm not a big fan of hooks.
You know what? I don't know if I think there are different types of texts, right? That I have learned about recently.
Yeah.
I mean, not recently, like I know about.
Yeah.
Like this, they're different for like, if you're testing, depending on the type of test that you're doing, you can use different type of tools to do your tests. Like, say for example, you just want to test like the HTML side of things, or you could use, for example, Spectator, like to actually like test like how your UI should look and like something.
I agree. But like I think the conversation about tests and all the different things is like another hour and a half thing. So we probably shouldn't be starting it right now.
Yeah, for sure. We could put a pin on it, and then at some point, like we could talk about this another time. But pretty sure we have workarounds around this kind of issues. And when we talk, I'm excited.
Yeah. We'll see.
Thank you for today. Thank you, Vasily.
Thank you, Mo. Yeah. Thanks for the subject. You know, some things in there kind of make me rant, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah, I like your rant. Sometimes you just get it out, and sometimes I'm with you too. We do it together. You get it out. It's therapy.
Yeah, yeah. It is
You
it
get
is
it out.
therapy. It is therapy. I get to bitch about things, and it's helpful. I was like, oh, I feel better now, honestly.
Yeah, you've been
So
keeping
thank
it
you
in
for
your mind
that.
for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are with us and listening, let us know what you think. What do you think about, you know, can architecture solve all of your problems by itself, or is it just a marketing ploy? We hope to see you, in the comments and in a Telegram channel and in the Discord, whichever you prefer. And with that in mind, thank you for being with us, and we'll see you in the next one. So thank you and have a great night. Bye bye.